as well. So without further ado, we have our guest speaker today, who is Anna Sanders, the Director of Product Development at Global Phishing Watch. And she'll be talking about the data set that I just shared with you all. Over to you, Anna.
Great, thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure to meet everyone. I have watched all the previous sessions and I'm just so excited to see so many that represent, all over the world. So really excited to see that. And I'm really hoping to see projects related to SDG 14. This is near and dear to my heart. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So Global Phishing Watch, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. What is product development? Well, at Global Phishing Watch, we create really cool new tools and technology to make sure that ocean stakeholders can use the data to help drive management decisions. So we are specifically working all over the world with different countries to support the sustainable use of their ocean. Just a little bit about me. I have a background with the U.S. Coast Guard, so 16 years in the Coast Guard. I have a degree in marine environmental science from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy, and I have a master's degree in science and technology intelligence. I've worked with over 30 countries around the world, so specifically working with them through my capacity in both the Coast Guard as well as at Global Phishing Watch. So who is Global Phishing Watch? We are an international nonprofit. We are global, worldwide, and we're using satellite technology, machine learning, and data visualization to help build an accurate picture of human activity at sea. This is free and open, which is fantastic. Our co-founders include Google, Oceana, and SkyTruth, and we were founded in 2017 as an international nonprofit. We're working to help support greater transparency of data. We have an amazing team of research and data scientists, and we're working together as just this amazing team to help reduce illegal, unreported, and unregulated phishing. A little bit about Global Phishing Watch. We have staff in over 20 countries. We speak over 12 different languages at least. I learn new things every day. We have over 88,000 users in over 200 countries who use our data to support their needs. Well, first, I want to kind of talk about SDG 14 in case you aren't aware. SDG 14 specifically is designed to help conserve and sustainably use our oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. You can see the different areas or the different targets that the UN has set. This is just sort of an infographic that shows all the different ones. Where we're specifically focused is in target 14.4, sustainable fishing, 14.5, conserve coastal and marine areas. And we're working to help support other different partners in some of these other different areas with our data, because ultimately the intersection of fishing activity and the use of the ocean really go hand in hand. So why is this important? Well, our ocean is under immense pressure. A third of the world's major commercial fishing species are overfished, and the UN estimates that 2/3 of the marine environment has significantly been altered by human actions. We'll be having a study that comes out later this year that really talks about not just the rapid growth of the fishing industry, but also the rapid growth of the industrialization of the ocean. We have within the last 5 years, we've identified over a 20% increase in wind farms and oil development at sea. But specifically talking about fishing, why do we need to act? 1 in 5 fish is lost to IUU fishing, or legal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. That's a $23 billion loss to the world's economy. It's food security and resources for up to 40% of the world's population. And again, a majority of the stocks are overfished. What's the other issue? Well, a lot of data sets that you'll see are on land, right? The ocean is actually very poorly monitored. And so there's not really a good, accurate picture of human activity at sea. And so what we need to do is we need to understand really the humanity's impact on the ocean. It's the new frontier. This lack of visibility, especially into illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, really allows it to thrive. So what's our purpose? It's to create and publicly share knowledge about human activity at sea, to enable fair and sustainable use of our ocean. And so what we're looking to try to do is really revolutionize the way that we have to monitor the oceans, providing some near real-time tracking of data, making that data freely available. So I'll show you how to go into some of the ways that this works. We want to specifically work to shed a light on all of this activity. And we want to accelerate scientific research and our government partners to create action and impact. So I'm just going to quickly do a short YouTube video that's going to go into a little bit more about our technology. Please let me know if you can hear it.
We can.
You can't hear it? Can you hear it?
No, we can't hear it.
Okay, let me check.
Maybe if you unshare and then share again and make sure that it says sharing audio as well.
Okay. Done. Share sound. Okay, I think I have got it. Great. Can you hear it
So
now?
much of our ocean is hidden from view. Just a decade ago, building an accurate picture of human activity at sea was impossible. But thanks to advances in satellite technology, machine learning, and data visualization, Global Fishing Watch is making it a reality. We track, process, and visualize billions of GPS coordinates from hundreds of thousands of ocean-going vessels, and use artificial intelligence to illuminate their movements across the globe. To identify each vessel and its activity, we start with information from vessel registries and integrate it with tracking data from public and government sources. Then, our machine learning models predict the size and type of a particular vessel, the kind of fishing gear used, or when and where it's fishing based on movement patterns. But not all vessels transmit their location. To see more, we analyze millions of gigabytes of imagery from optical and radar satellites, revealing the global footprint of marine traffic and structures, and vessels that may not show up in monitoring systems. Using advanced research and cutting-edge technology, We synthesize these global feeds to turn big data into actionable information. Free to everyone, our interactive platform provides governments, scientists, and authorities with the ability to transform ocean monitoring. By making the invisible visible, Global Fishing Watch is helping to achieve a healthy and resilient ocean.
Okay, I hope everyone got the audio on that specific video.
Yep.
Okay, great. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the map of fishing activity that was mentioned in the video. So this is the map of global fishing activity as seen through Global Fishing Watch. The green areas represent the fishing vessel activity detected by what's called AIS, or Automated Identification System. And the yellow areas represent fishing vessel detected by VMS, which is Vessel Monitoring System. The image represents about 60,000 vessels, and you can actually drill down into individual vessels that have been detected. So what is this specific data set? So specifically, Anela had shared earlier, the Global Fishing Watch Apparent Fishing Effort data set through the UN SDG network dashboard. So what is this? This information specifically is peer-reviewed data and information. We've published various different articles and have been cited in over 3,000 different publications from this specific study. We're constantly improving our algorithms and sort of working with other research scientists to help validate this information. Originally, AIS was developed as a safety and collision for safety collision avoidance. And what we look to try to do is we analyze the data for known or possible commercial fishing vessels. We take this data and we analyze to identify those positions that are possibly known or unknown fishing. And then we classify their movements of activity. And I'll show you an example of 3 different types of vessels here in a minute, of where we use training data to be able to identify their specific patterns. And so this changes based on the vessel's speed and direction. Each point has then been classified as either fishing or non-fishing. So what does this specifically look like? Well, these are the transmissions from a trawling vessel. So specifically looking at the symmetry of the water here, we're able to also identify the specific patterns based on their direction, speed, to be able to identify those known positions of fishing. At Global Fishing Watch, we don't just have research scientists, we actually have individuals who've actually got the experience on board as observers on some of these fishing vessels. And so that information helps then curate all of that training data that we're able to use and run our algorithms with. The second pattern is longline fishing. So you can see it's a very distinct pattern, sort of going back and forth, where a longline fishing vessel will set and then haul their nets. This data and information can actually be used, and we're working with BirdLife International to be able to specifically see where the intersection of bird life species intersect with some of this longline activity. Because if the fishing vessels don't take mitigation measures to set their nets, then it's possible that there might be some bird bycatch. And so species like the albatross and others are then threatened by these fishing vessels because they're attracted to the fish, obviously. And then you have the purse seine vessels. So the tuna purse seine vessels will actually create like a circle net, and then they'll sort of scoop and then tie that purse together. And so that's how they're able to catch quite a bit of fish, and they'll pull that on board. So where can I access this specific data? Like Anela said, you can go to the dashboard. It's in an ArcGIS map visualization. There's other ways to access this, and I'm sure that they're going to provide you the presentation later, and these all have the links to it. We have the data download portal. So this information should provide a CSV data set that you can download directly from the website that you're able to use. You can actually download from the Global Fishing Watch map into either a CSV or a JSON file. This data is 72 hours delayed, so it's a more recent data set. And then you can also use the Global Fishing Watch API and or GFW R package. So these are for a more, if you have experience with R, there's some great opportunities to look at more tech and coding resources. And we have several repositories that show you specific examples how to use the R package. So now I'm going to go into a demo of the Global Fishing Watch map, but I'd like to at least pause for any questions from the audience, and I'll look at the chat real quick. Is anyone focused their project on the ocean yet? Any projects related to SDG 14? All right, well, we'll have some time at the end. Oh, was that a comment?
I just had a question. Sorry.
Okay, great. No worries.
Wondering about the difference between farmed fishing and open sea, open water fishing, and whether there was maybe space for farming to take the burden off of overfishing in the open sea, or if that's not possible.
Right. So what Global Fishing Watch does specifically focuses on the industrial fishing activity at sea. However, we're looking to really monitor the progress of aquaculture development. So aquaculture is sort of some of that penned farm fish that you're talking about. And it has rapidly risen over the last decade and will be likely surpassing. But with all great things, farmed fishing also poses additional issues to the environment, such as spillage of those fisheries, so into other populations that might be endangered. So for example, I live in Seattle, Washington, and nearby they farm salmon. Well, at one point, the pen broke away. And what happened is then you are starting to mix the population of the farmed fish with the natural species in the environment. And that can actually cause some conflict, as well as if you think about Darwin, the survival of the fittest. It is likely that, it can create disease, competition of resources, et cetera. And so we are seeing, differences in how it's maintained and managed. And so we just encourage that if farmed fish is going to happen, that it's done in a proper and safe way. We've got our summer theme for SDG 14 has a very interesting topic surrounding the ocean, collected by students sharing some sample story maps and cases that have inspired students this year. Excellent. How did you decide on using those type of net designs for fishing? Well, I didn't design the fishing nets. Those are specifically designed, over centuries and centuries to be able to harvest the different types of fish. So if you look at the trawling fishing vessels, they have they target a specific type of species, which might actually be at the lower levels in the benthic habitat location, so more of the ground fish. Whereas tuna pursine and tuna longline is specifically looking at how tuna can be extracted. So there's specific paths at which they can use to optimize their fishing methods. But there are other types of fishing methods. So there's squid jigging. And squid jigging actually uses these lights at night to help attract fishing vessels, attract squid fishing. And so they use these really high powered lights, which we're actually able to detect using night lights. And that is a way of bringing the squid up to the surface, which then they're able to bring on board. So there's different methods of fishing all over the world to be able to extract those resources. So I'm just going to step out of my presentation and go to the demo if that's okay with everyone. All right. So if you go to globalfishingwatch.org, you're able to come to our main page, and you can actually go to click on Go to Map. I've actually preloaded everything just in case things run a little slowly today. And so what you come into is the map of global fishing activity. And I'm going to go through a couple different examples, but first I'm going to kind of step everyone through the map. First, on the left-hand panel, we have the apparent fishing effort from the AIS. So that's that collision avoidance system that vessels have on board. Now, not every fishing vessel will have this, but majority of the major industrial fishing vessels do. So what we're able to do is we're able to see these vessels over the period from 2018 to 2023. And so that takes you all the way up to actually within 72 hours of the current day. So if I wanted to specifically zoom in a little bit more, I can actually go into the day and I can select a specific day. I can go in and select specific hours of activity. And it will actually filter this information over here on the panel side. What you'll also see is this orange. So we actually have specific vessel monitoring system data that our partners have provided. In this case, we have over 10 different countries who have shared their VMS data, including Belize, Brazil, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Indonesia, Norway, Panama, Papua New Guinea, and Peru. And we're working with many other different countries to make their data publicly available so that you and others know exactly where our fish is coming from and that it's being sustainably managed. And so these are just a couple examples of some of the fishing activity. And you can actually go in and click on each individual square to be able to see who that fishing vessel is, how many hours they fished, what flag they're from, and the type of gear that they have. If you click on the pin, you're actually able to bring in the fishing vessel track into the map. And I'm just going to show you a little example here. Is that now you have the fishing vessel track. You can hover over the specific track and be able to see the fishing activity information. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. And you can see where those fishing points are on the map, as well as different activities such as encounters. And what does that mean? It means that these fishing vessels stay out at sea for really long periods of time. And what's really important about this is that those crews haven't gotten off their vessel in 6 months, a year, and sometimes even longer. And so they're facilitated by other vessels called carrier vessels that come in and provide them salt, spare parts, food, other crew replacements, but that crew itself stays on board that vessel. And so part of what Global Fishing Watch is doing is, one, identifying when those transshipments are occurring, who they're being facilitated by, and if there is any specific forced labor potentially on board any of these fishing vessels. So we're working with countries in the Pacific to help do some fisheries boardings to be able to identify conditions for forced labor. So these are examples here where we have actual events where this vessel has met up with another vessel. A couple other different layers that we have include our vessel presence layer. So this includes other different types of activity, such as shipping, oil and gas, cargo, and you can sort by the different types of fishing vessels here. Or if you want to select, where are the bunker vessels or tanker vessels, it will actually filter that for you. You can filter by flag of the vessel, as well as the source of information. There's lots of great ways to be able to start to look at that traffic. And this is an example where we have now all of that activity specifically for tankers around the world. We also have those detections by nightlights that I was talking about. So thinking about those vessels, those fishing vessels that use squid fishing. I think someone here is from Argentina, but squid is a really big species that's caught outside of the exclusive economic zone of Argentina. And what you can see here is the detections of these specific fishing vessels. We've connected the identity information with that. So you're able to specifically see how many times the vessel has been detected. And if you want, you can add the vessel track as well. So now I'm going to go into a couple of examples specifically from my own experience. So as a Coast Guard officer, I specifically would help plan the patrols and provide information on a daily basis out to our Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard pilots who go and do patrols over our marine protected area monuments. We would also provide information and data about fishing vessels that maybe are higher risk. And so what I would do is I would use this information to help be able to use our resources and allocate them appropriately. So in the Pacific, tuna is the really big species. So hope you all like sushi. Some tuna is caught out here in the Pacific. And so what I've done here is I've actually filtered by the different gear type for both the tuna purse seine. So that was that circular pattern, as well as the long line. So that's that sort of back and forth pattern. And what we've done here is we've been able to now identify those two different types of fishing activity. You can kind of see this band. I'll just turn off the long line, sort of in the middle where the pursing activity is most prevalent. Give it a second to load. And so you can sort of see that sort of band in the middle, but you can also see the long line fishing activities for higher up. So there's different types of species that can be targeted. So whether it's albacore, big eye, bluefin, there's many different types of tuna. And so there's different species temperature and chlorophyll that they are more reactive to, and would then be sort of following that path in the ocean. So now I've taken this information and I've been able to identify where that different type of activity is. Now I can actually go in and specifically look at the type of analysis. Just going to show you this specific example. So this is the Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monument. It makes up several different islands in the Pacific, including Howland Island. We have the Jarvis Islands. We have the Palmyra Atoll. And we also have the Johnston Atoll over here. And so what this does is it provides you the specific fishing activity within each of these specific areas. Well, the fishing activity in this area is available to our US flagged fishing vessels. So I'm just going to click on a couple of these different areas to see. Yes, so we have the Cape May and the Evelina, the Rosso. Those are fishing vessels that are authorized to fish in the US exclusive economic zone. But what we don't want to see is fishing activity inside of these national monuments. And so this is what this report is actually showing, is that these fishing vessels actually had some activity within these specific areas. So I'm just going to quickly show specifically what these look like. I'm just going to go here. Make sure it's loading. So what you can do is if you're interested in a particular area, all you do is click and then you see this button right here, which is analysis. You can quickly create this analysis, or you can actually download that data. So as Anelo was saying earlier, you may want to download and upload your data from other different sources. Well, this is a way of being able to do this as well. So a CSV or a GeoJSON can be created for all of the active vessels within the time range that you've selected. You can either select day, month, year, and you can select it by any of these other different group by vessels. You can also download a GeoTIFF, a CSV, or GeoJSON of the specific gridded activity that you see here. And you click download, gets you your zip file. Okay, so quite easy to do. Let me just see if this will allow me to do this. Just having a little bit of trouble loading this morning because I'm sharing my screen. So what you can do here is I'm just going to show you what that activity then looks like. So as a Coast Guard officer, what I would be most interested in looking at is, where is this activity occurring? So it's really close to that boundary line. And so I want to know and understand if any of this activity was actually inside of the exclusive economic zone. So what I can do is I can actually show specifically here on the time bar that activity. And so I can hover over the track here and be able to see if this specific fishing vessel had activity within the area. It's doing all of them in tandem. So there it is. So now what I would do is I would let my counterparts know in Hawaii that there was some possible activity that was inside of the marine monument, the Johnston Atoll. And so what this means is I would then go and request from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, if they had additional vessel monitoring system tracks to be able to see if there was activity within this area. I would then alert the vessel and the vessel owner specifically about that activity and if they can prove whether they had specific fishing logs at that time. So I do something similar to all of these different areas, and I'd be able to look to see. But every area is different. And so you need that specific context about what is specifically an authorized activity or not. So here's an example where we have, if you go into any of these different areas, you can actually get to the specific information about what is protected and what is not. So for the, we have our partners at Protected Seas Navigator. where we're actually looking at what is the regulation summary, what's an authorized activity, who's the governing, where's the governing regulations, and what activity is specifically prohibited, restricted, or allowed. Okay. In addition, I would also bring up and look at some of the permit details. Is there authorization of that activity for that specific area? And they have a permit list where you're then able to look at that. So if I'm in another country, I might want to see what are the authorizations within my country in those waters, and then do the comparison. And what you can do is you can actually download that as a CSV and then do that comparison between the registry and the record of vessels. The other example that I'm going to show you is the most remote islands in the Atlantic Ocean. It's called Tristan da Cunha, and they're specifically so remote that the cargo vessels and the tanker vessels that go through here sometimes don't even see them on a map. And so the problem is that they've had some previous disasters where the vessels will go straight through and cause disasters where they'll spill oil or there'll be a biological hazard on board the vessel. And so they want to know specifically who are the vessels transiting through my area. And they've created an areas to be avoided around their islands. And so what I can do is I can specifically look at that analysis feature again. And I can see, who were the specific vessels, what were their flags and nationalities, and, where specifically are these vessels going to and coming from? And then that really helps us be able to support Tristan da Cunha with being able to alert those vessels to not go through their specific area. So when this works, you'd be able to also see the tracks, and you'd be able to see the previous known ports that they were at. This is a great example specifically of how to use the map to be able to see different types of activities. Within Tristan da Cunha, there's no authorized fishing for other vessels, specifically for non-Tristan da Cunha vessels. The Belizean flagged vessel is actually the vessel that they use for their local lobster fishing. But there are a couple other vessels here that will actually show some of these patterns that are a little bit more suspicious. And so this is something where I would look into specifically, what was this activity that they were doing up here at the edge of the marine protected area? And so I would look into what is that fishing activity and how long did it occur? So this is almost 7 hours worth of fishing activity here and here. And I would look at that and I would specifically see if there's any additional information on those vessels and alert the government of Tristan da Cunha, as well as the UK Marine Management Office, who would take care of some of the notifications to the country itself. So I'm just going to pause for any questions.
There was one in the chat about, do these economic zones belong to certain countries or places or people?
Yeah, so the exclusive economic zones specifically are 200 nautical miles outside of the different countries, essentially land mass. And so that is something that is defined, and I have some information here. So it extends from the country's coast. And we use this boundary information, which I believe Anela that the dashboard uses as well. And these specifically are the treaty lines that have been created. And you can see where that metadata is from. And so the waters here mean that the nationality of Tristan has the right to extract, whether it's minerals, fishing, the fish resources, and other natural features within specifically that 200 nautical miles.
So we are at the end of time, but if anyone has a quick question, then we can answer that. If not, I sort of have a quick question.
Okay.
So for the exclusive economic zones, is there any leeway of like if you're within like this many meters or whatever of the zone, it's like okay, even if you're in it, or is it like a hard stop?
Yeah, so there's also some interpretations of those boundaries that are in dispute. So there
Okay.
is some finagling there that some countries specifically do. But from my experience with the US exclusive economic zone, I watched that boundary between US and Canada, and all of the Pacific remote islands. Well, what we find is that there are some vessels, vessels can transit through, and that's okay. But it's when they actually look to extract, when they look to fish within the area, that I'm most concerned about. And so
Okay.
I want to know if they've got their nets in the water. That's how I can prove the case in court. And so I've had a couple times where the boundary line may be misinterpreted on a specific chart. And we've sent it's called a demarche to a country to say, knock it off. These 10 vessels aren't using, and it turns out it was just a nautical chart error. Well, they were able to correct that and make sure that they stayed actually even further away so
Yeah.
that they knew that they wouldn't get in trouble the next time.
Yeah.
Because essentially remote law enforcement, the way that we're using the technology is a great way of being able to sort of police vessels without having to send $1 million worth of patrol boats out to sea for months at a time.
Yeah. We are at the end of time, so maybe we can just share your contact information. And if anyone has other questions, we can go from there. But if you do want to answer in the chat, I know Tim has some closing statements. So
Well, I'll let Anvi's question go.
Okay.
Yeah. So on the there are specific countries that actually provide permissions or licenses to other fishing vessels. So they'll pay for access into countries like the Kiribati EEZ to do some of the fishing. So it's country by country basis to be able to allow other foreign fishing vessels in their areas. So again, context is really important, knowing and understanding those regulations.
All right. Thank you guys so much. And thank you so much, Anna. This was really interesting. The only thing I wanted to say was a quick thing on the licenses and the EDSRI and this Slack as well. And, people have messaged me about having access. So feel free to email and reach out. And you can text me in the chat as well if something has not been working for you. But other than that, that's all I had to say. So Anela, you can close us out.
Great. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Anna. Once we get the recording of this, we'll send it out and put it out on our social media. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Bye, guys.